How's the con treating y'all? I can say y'all. Yes. How many of you are backers of the game? How many of you are not backers of the game? Okay, I need to talk to you. I need to focus on you guys. So, if you're not backers of the game, why are you here? No, seriously, what brought you here if you're not backers of the game? This guy, you. Okay, you brought each other. Great, yes. What's that? Oh, cool. Okay, all right. And you? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, all right. Okay, so for those of you who are not backers of the game, well, just to all of you in general, the program says, join Trevor as he runs you through an adventure, runs the room through an adventure. And I thought, there's a better way to watch me do my shtick, and that's on YouTube. I think a better use of this time here is to show you, not that, but to show you what the game looks like, and specifically to walk through where the game lives right now in terms of its mechanics, because everybody has been saying, how does this thing work? What's the deal? I've been teasing so much information. Here's the thing. The game is done. It's done. But the layout is not. And the pictures are not. The art is not. So that's what's taking all the time right now. But it's been sitting on my computer waiting, saying, bring me out to the people. But I can't yet. I can't because it's not done. So you guys get to see the guts of the game with samples of what it's actually going to look like. So we have about 18 pages that I've brought with me that I'm comfortable showing. Still work in progress. But yeah, you will see more than anybody's ever seen. And then we'll go through the guts of the game. So just to be clear, I will show you these samples of the layout. And then we'll go through the game and you're going to see the Google Doc. You're going to see the raw information, okay? That is not the book you bought. Okay, I just want to stress, that's just the guts of it, okay? But there's a lot of really cool things about it. In fact, I was at a dinner with the YouTube folks last night, a bunch of them like Kelsey and Baron Darop and all these folks, and I was explaining to them some of the social mechanics, especially because one of them, not Luke Crane. He's I forget his last name. He's fairly well known. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, he was saying, yeah, you know, all these people that want to make rules for social mechanics, and I just think, no, it doesn't work. And I went, actually, Luke, in my game, yeah. So, but when I explained it to him, I saw him going, huh. I never thought of doing that before. So that's cool. That's the goal, right? It's a good sign. As I've said before, to those of you who know, I didn't set out to create something new and, oh my God, no one's ever done this before. What I set out to do was pull from all of my favorite games that I've played or run over the past 40 years and put them together under one roof so that they all work together. And that has miraculously come to pass. So it's a combination of old school games from the 80s and sort of new games. So there's a lot of simulationist elements from the old days, but they're also kind of, I don't want to say narrativist elements, but leaning to that. So it's a hodgepodge, but it all actually works. Everyone who's played the game to date, and this is a small sample size, more than me, but everyone who's played the game to date has also the same thing. Wow, this is great. This is exactly what you set out to do. This is exactly what you promised on the Kickstarter. And I went, okay, good. I had one guy who I respect very much say to me, he was running us through a combat using the full system, and he was so excited, he was so into it. And I'm like, huh. And I'm watching, and I'm taking notes, and I'm, trying not to be killed in my own game. And afterwards he said, and this guy has run as much as me. He's run everything. He said, this is my favorite combat system ever. And I went, don't say that, you'll jinx it. Anyway, so it's good, and I hope that you guys all like it too from what you'll see. Okay, so first of all, let us begin with the example of the layout. So, again, work in progress here. A lot of this art, in fact, I think all of this art I'm going to show you today is temp. It's all temp, because we're waiting on our guys to get the stuff to us. It's just the way it is. We have a bunch of art, but it's all in later chapters, just so you know. Okay. So this is the essential look of the game here. What you're seeing is a 2-page spread, right? So it's as though the book is spread out in front of you. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds of this. I just want to give you a basic sense. So this whole first chapter, Core Mechanics, it gives you the basic rundown on how you roll dice in this game. So to give you the quick précis, it is a D100 game. In other words, it's percentile dice, and you roll your skill or under. It is a skill-based game. It is not a class-based game. It is not a level-based game. It is a skill-based game, much in the tradition of RuneQuest or Mithras or Harnmaster or games like this, okay? There's a few little differences from games like Call of Cthulhu or BRP or these traditional 1D100 games. The biggest difference is it is a blackjack mechanic, which means you roll under but high. So if your skill is 60, the closer you get to 60, the better. I pulled that one from Delta Green, which is a fantastic game. And you know you succeeded if you rolled your skill or under, but very often you need to calculate your level of success or your success level. And how you do that is the simplest thing ever. You look at the tens die of your roll. That's your success level. So if your skill is 60 and you rolled a 42, you succeeded with 4 SL. Done. A lot of previous iterations of this rule, like the old FFG 40K games, they are perfectly fine. I love those games, but they had a little subtraction element in there, right? Where your skill's 60, but you want to roll low. So if you rolled 24, you subtract 2 from 6, and now you succeeded with 4. It works, but to me, I go, no, subtraction, no, icky, pooey, yucky. So this way is the blackjack system much, much simpler, okay? That's the basic. There's standard and opposed roll. Standard just means, did you roll your skill or less? Great. Opposed roll is everything else. There's some force acting against me. Either that force is going to roll its own skill and we compare success levels, or it has its own target success level, like a poison. A poison doesn't have a poison skill. It just has like a TSL, a target success level of 3. So you got to get 3 SL in order to beat that poison. Simple, simple, simple stuff, okay? But there's a lot of variance within that. There's a lot of things we can do within it. What isn't here right now, in this particular iteration of our layout, but is coming, is the concept of expertise. So, oh, yes, thank you. That's going to happen quite often, isn't it? With the D100 system, and you have a skill of 80, well, you have an 80% chance of succeeding. That's great. But you have no guarantee over what your success levels are going to be, right? Because it could be anywhere from 1 to 80. So there's something called expertise. Expertise is a talent, which is kind of like a feat, which we'll talk about in a second, that raises the floor of your skill. So you could have expertise 2, 3, or 4. What that means is if you succeed at the roll, you are guaranteed that amount of success levels. So expertise 3 means if you roll a 12, you succeeded with 3 success levels, not 1, right? So that's how we demonstrate skilled characters without having to deal with the crazy swinginess that can happen with those dice mechanics, yeah? Okay, so yeah, this is kind of what we're looking at here. There's an opposed roll summary. These are some stuff. Extended rolls is another thing. A lot of the time, there'll be a situation where, like in a lot of games, we need to do something over time and we need multiple rolls in order to achieve it. You're just counting success levels. This ultimately is basically the skill challenge system for D&D 4, if anybody knows that, which is much maligned. But I think it's incredibly useful. And I think the reason why people dump all over D&D 4 skill skill challenge system is because I think a lot of GMs just turned it into a bunch of mindless dice rolling. All right, roll the skill, now roll it again. Okay, 2 hours pass, you succeed. Well, that's not playing the game. That's just rolling dice like an idiot. So I think it's much maligned because I think it's extraordinarily useful to have that kind of thing where you can say, we're researching a topic in this library. Every roll we make is going to take a day, and we need to accumulate 12 success levels in order to get what we want. The question there is, how long does it take you to do it? But you only need to roll if it's important. Like in any game, you only roll if there's a consequence to failure, right? Okay. With me so far, right? This is all fairly straightforward stuff. This is not brain surgery. Nothing in this game is brain surgery. Working together. The timer die, I'll briefly... Sorry? That's a wise skill, which it's a specialty skill. We'll come to that. The timer die is just another way of dealing with tasks over time. It's actually something I came up with in the middle of filming an episode of Me, Myself, and Die, season 4. and I realized, oh, I can introduce this random event as a timer instead of just a standard thing. Like instead of saying, I've got 3 rounds to accomplish this, no, I roll. And every time I roll a skill, I roll that D10. And if it's the number of rounds or less that have elapsed, it's over, right? So it's another little, whoo. Anyway, so that's an option there. Favor and resolve, this is the closest thing to a meta currency in the game as we have. But it's based on the character. Favor is just a pool of points you can earn through various things that give you a little advantage, plus 10 to a roll. You can spend up to 3 favor on any given roll. Your resolve is typically how you give yourself the favor, right? So this isn't story points. This isn't narrative points. This isn't, I'm going to spend a resolve point to say that there's a weapon under the table. This is not a story editing game. It's more simulationist, which means that the resolve you have, the favor, the bonus you're getting is based on your character's current resolve, which gets affected by fatigue and all this kind of stuff, okay? Okay. Then we get into skills. So this is, like a lot of skill-based games, there's a bunch of skills, but there's not too many skills. I tried to reduce the amount of skills as much as possible. Anybody familiar with the game Rollmaster? Yeah. Okay, for those of you right now, I can see your eyes glazing over, thinking about the number of skills in Rollmaster, hundreds and hundreds if you used all the companions. This is not that. This is me saying, what are the absolute crucial but minimal number of skills we require in order for characters to do anything? Remember, this is not a class or level-based game, which means that everything you do in the game is a skill. Also, no stats in the game. I lie. There are stats, but they're more of a nod to the old way of playing than they are like in a lot of games where, like a D&D. If I've got an 18th strength, we know what that means. It means I can carry this much and I'm going to get +3 to hit and damage or whatever it is. This game is a little different. It's entirely about the skill, right? Everything's about that. And of course the talents, which will bump that skill in certain ways. So the basic skills are combat skills, self-explanatory. Adventuring skills, which is all your stuff like track and perception and stuff like that. Social skills. This is a big departure from a lot of games. This is closer to Burning Wheel in that there are many, many, many ways to skin a cat in a social encounter. D&D 5 has what? Persuasion and intimidate? Boo. This has more. Not as many as Burning Wheel does. Burning Wheel has like 25 different versions of persuading people, right? What's that? And you can make more, yeah. But that's not what this is. I think there's 9. So it's things like persuade, deceive, seduce, wit, protocol, inspire. A lot of this was really heavily influenced by the One Ring. The One Ring has, I think, 4 or 5 key social skills, and it's magnificent, and it works beautifully. So that's what I try to do with the skill list, just boil them down to their core constituents. For example, we will see, well, you can't really see here, but athletics. Athletics covers everything. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people say, no, there's a difference between climbing and swimming, and I want to model that. Well, you're on your own, which you can perfectly do, but for me, because this whole game is about what I like, athletics is enough. Are you athletic? You can climb. Okay, you can swim. You're fine. Are you wearing armor? Well, that's different, but that's handled in the armor rules, right? Adventuring social skills, lore skills are basically anything you know. And also practical application of specialized knowledge like healing, for example, is actually a lore skill. And then magic skills, which is used specifically by the spell weavers and the godbound, which are the clergy, the priests. Okay, so yeah, here's your skill lists, the combat skills, dodge, melee, light, medium weapons. So the melee weapons are divided into 3 categories, but then they break down more specifically in terms of their stats later on. Blah, blah, blah. We've all seen this a million times. There's a language table of all the spoken languages in the Broken Empires. I'm very proud of this little thing here. Bind strands of part of the magic skills, boom. Then we talk about skill competency. What does it mean? What does it mean to have a skill of 50 versus 60, for example, right? Now this bit, succeeding without a roll, right there. This is another thing that I was so inspired by Delta Green. This was the first game that I saw do it. That doesn't mean it was the first game that did it. It's just the first time I saw it. The idea of succeeding without a skill. So let's say you're investigating a crime scene, okay? And a lot of games would say, all right, when the players come to the crime scene, they all roll perception. And whoever succeeds at a perception discovers this clue, let's say. Well, succeeding without a roll means that instead of doing that, you say, when the players walk in the room, anyone with a perception of 40 or more notices this. Anyone with a perception of 60 or more notices this. So it's just automatic. Now, that doesn't mean you can't roll. Let's say you've got a perception of 30. Of course you can roll. You can still roll to try and succeed. But of course, there's always consequences for failure. That's key, right? I love this little rule. So cool. Right out of Delta Green. I think. Like I said, it's first place I saw it. Very cool. Okay. Finding information, supporting skills. Supporting skills is a concept that comes from Mithras. It's the idea that you, as your character, can benefit from another skill if it can apply in that situation. So if you're, I don't know, healing your horse, let's say. Your horse has taken an arrow and you want to do a heal skill roll, but you want to support that heal skill roll with your knowledge of animals, which is nature-wise. So what you do is you take the tens die value of your supporting skill, so let's say it's 40. That tens die is 4, you double it, and you add that to your primary skill. So if your heal skill is 50, and your animal-wise is 40, you double the 4 to 8, now your new skill is 58, right? So it's not a gargantuan bonus, but every little bit helps. Yeah, so that comes right out of Mithras. It's a really, really cool way to handle it. You can get help from other people that way, or you can help yourself. You can draw upon your own skills to help yourself in that case. Okay.
Is there a limit to how many supporting skills?
One. You can only use one. Talents are basically feats. We all know what this is. I don't go overboard with the talents in this, but each of these talents is very specific and they're pretty damn cool. And they're always expanding. This is as much as will be in the core book, but of course I've got a whole list of other things that eventually I want to release, but that will come. So let's look at this. You've got your classics like Eagle Eye. Add 1 zone when determining effective range when using one specified range weapon. So if you use a longbow and you've got this, you can fire 1 zone further, for example. Stuff like that. So you've got combat talents. We've got combat maneuver talents. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Adventuring talents. These are all connected to the skills, essentially, right? Social talents, lore talents. This is my favorite one, Blather. Spew a string of gobbledygook to confuse one target, in combat or otherwise. The target must be able to hear and understand you. As an action, make a wit roll opposed to the target's insight, and if you win, they suffer -20 to the next roll, etc. I love that stuff. That was inspired by Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay version 1, actually. Lore talents, and then magic talents, and all this good stuff. Miscellaneous is all the stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else. Like you want to have more quote-unquote hit points, that's where this would go. You want to be able to carry more stuff, that's where this would go. Yada, yada, yada. And then non-human talents. So, this is not a menagerie game. This is not the zoo of the Broken Empires where you can play all sorts of dragon men and cat people and all of that stuff. No, there are 5 principal races in the game, overwhelmingly human. In the game, overwhelmingly human. If you want to roll randomly for your character's race, which you can do, I think there's an 80% chance you're going to be human. Again, you can ignore that. You can just say, I want to be this, and then congratulations, you're that. But overwhelmingly human is the default. Other than that, there's dwarves, which are a little, they're very similar to the dwarves as we know, but there's a few things that separate them. There's half-orcs. Half-orcs are very cool. Half-orcs are not born of the union between man and orc. They are only male, and they are hatched in the mountains, much as Peter Jackson's Uruk-hai were hatched. So there's no female half-orcs. Half-orcs don't mean that they're half of anything. What it means that at some point in these particular orcs' lives, something snaps in their brain where they become civilized. And now they no longer understand the barbarous savages that their orc brethren are, because make no mistake, in the Broken Empires, orcs are monsters to be killed, not things to be played as characters. So a half-orc is someone who went, oh, wait a minute, you guys are too violent. Basically, there was some little switch that went off. So there's that. There's ogres, which are interesting in their own right. There's Bolgfir. So this is the closest thing to elves or half-elves that we get in the setting. There are elves in the setting's history called the Duanan Seed. They no longer live in the world, as far as we know. But the Bolgfir are their cousins, who were abandoned by the elves after the elves left. And the Bolgfir were left holding the bag, going, what are you doing? You're leaving us with these humans and orcs and dwarves. Thanks for nothing. So that's the Bolgfir. They're attuned to magic more than other people are, and they have slightly pointed ears, and they're tall and thin, and yada, yada, yada. Finally, there is the Replaced. And the Replaced are humans who were abducted by the Dark Fae and served as slaves in the realm of the Dark Fae and who escaped and who have found that their old lives have been taken over by a changeling in their place. That's how you start as a Dark Fae. You come through the thorns and you got your life back, and now what? And you're constantly chased by the queen, the Fae Queen. However, you also retain a bit of the power of the Dark Fae as well. So you can do things like glamour, and there's all kinds of cool stuff. Anyway, so that's it. That's the races. There's no Dragonborn. There's no halflings. I know some of you may be going, oh well. I love halflings in Middle-earth, and this is not Middle-earth. So, okay. Watch, half the audience leaves. All right, so that is that. That's all we have for layout. I'm going to switch to the terrible, terrible Google Doc now, just to give you a sense. Okay, so again, I'm going to try and go through this as quickly and comprehensively as possible. Character creation is modeled kind of like the old RuneQuest rules. There's 11 steps. The first thing is you choose your race. And you can call it lineage or ancestry or whatever is politically correct. I don't care. Me, it's a race. That's what it's called. You choose that because that sets a couple of base things, right? Assign your starting skills. Everybody has starting skills. You choose your stats. So I want to talk briefly about that. I'll bump down to stats here. So the 6 stats are in fact the big 6, the ones we all know and love. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. However, what they do is you pick 2 of these stats that your character is particularly, that excels in, okay? And what that does is it gives you a little bonus to a whole host of skills. It gives you access to one of 3 talents that are specific to those stats, and it gives you a level of expertise in one of those skills as well. So it's kind of a big deal. I know that doesn't sound like much, but having expertise too is a much bigger deal than it actually seems like. So that's how stats come into it. You also get descriptors, stat descriptors. You can say, I'm brawny and smart if you want, but those actually have mechanical advantages. You can draw upon those mechanically later with something called personality traits, which we'll get to. With me so far, yeah? Great. Attributes are things like your max resolve, your toughness, initiative score, death threshold, lethality level. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but we'll talk more about this when we talk about combat, the cultural background. Again, this is very, very RuneQuest. There's basically 4 cultural backgrounds. There's civilized urban, civilized rural. What are the other ones? Barbarian and wanderer, right? And they just give you some extra. Basically, character creation is a series of going through a number of steps in which you have a bunch of points to spend on skills and talents and things like that. So you build your character step by step. There is no total random way to make a character. All of these things can be randomized individually to an extent, but it's not like, I'm going to roll 3d6 down the line and play what I come up with. It's not really that kind of game. You do have a lot of agency with picking what your character's going to be. Life events, this is my favorite. There is a life path system in the game. Basically, every character has 3 events that they roll randomly for. And it's your origin, your youth, and your recent events. Now, they could be anything, and there is a whole bunch. I have to switch documents here. There is a whole bunch. Life event origin. There's all these entries. So, for example, let's look at this one. Raised in the wild. Don't do that. Raised in the wild. You grew up on the edge of civilization, either in the wilderness or among nomads. What animal or spirit do you believe watches over you? What hidden glade, ruin, or cave did you discover as a child? How did you prove yourself to your wild kin or guardians? Add +10 to nature-wise or survival. So, what you get out of that is you get a little bonus to a skill, which is important, but more importantly, you get a little taste of the character's history, which is very useful when you are crafting goals for the character. This entire game runs on goals. You don't get XP by going into dungeons and killing monsters unless your specific character goals are, I'm going to go into dungeons and kill monsters. So these life events are super useful when you're coming up with goals because they will suggest quests in your past, right? So there's also a randomization table you can use to change these up. This isn't holy writ. You don't have to use this exactly. You can use it as inspiration, right? Those of you who've watched my show know that I'm big on randomness and I'm big on creating in the moment. So much of this character creation system is based on that. So much of this whole game is predicated on the GM going, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's see. right? And again, that's not everybody's cup of tea, but it is my cup of tea. So that is what you will see here. So these are very, very cool. Oh, Jason Lutz of the Perilous Wilds was the guy that wrote most of these. So I gave him a bunch to start off, and then he did the rest, and he did just fantastic work. Really great team on this thing. You also have something called a previous career. Now, this, as I said, this is not a class-based system, but there are things called previous careers. This is the thing you did before you are the person you are today. It's like a package of skills and talents you can choose from. This is very much like RuneQuest or Mithras, right? Again, it's just you go through step by step. You got this pool of points. I'm going to put it into here, put it in there, and by the time you're all done, you've got a fairly well-rounded character who, I should point out, is quite competent at what you want them to be competent at, but they won't be good at everything. So it's not a zero to hero game. You don't start off as, oh, I can't take a hit or I'll die, unless you choose to make that character. But typically speaking, you're good. If you're a ranger, you can track. You can lead through the wilderness. If you're a fighter, you can swing a sword and take a hit. If you're a wizard, you can cast that spell, right? You're good. You got your stuff. You got it. You got it, man. You got this. Right. So there's a bunch. They look a lot like classes. Bard, civilian, godbound, lore master, merchant, ranger, rogue, speaker, spellweaver, and finally warrior. Again, you are not constrained by these. Once character creation is over, you can develop your character in any direction you wish, so long as the concept or the context of the game supports it. So if you're a warrior and you really want to become a guy who can cast magic, you can do that. It's called acquiring the Fade talent. A Fade is someone who has a little taste of magic, but they'll never be truly as powerful as a natural-born spellweaver. You can do that. It's expensive, and you got to find the people in the world to teach you, and you got to expend the XP to get that, but you can do it. Nothing's stopping you from that, right? Okay. And then there's rounding out. You get a bunch of points here, round out your character. Look, oh, you didn't put anything in perception, but you really want to be perceptive? All right, there you go. Now your perception's 50 instead of 20, right? Simple stuff there. Gear, we have armor and weapons. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the gear chapters. Personality traits. So I had, and have actually in the appendix, a very, very detailed personality system that is highly inspired by the Pendragon game. This is not that. This is not that because as cool as that is, it just didn't quite work the way I wanted it to in this. But I told everybody about it, and they said, but that sounds great. And I said, all right, I'll put it in the appendix. So now it's an option. But by default, you have, I think, 2 descriptors. You've got stat descriptors, which is based on your strength or intelligence or whatever. And then there's some common personality traits, and I can't remember. I think you take 2 or something. But basically how it works is, if you want to draw upon a personality trait or stat descriptor, they're the same thing, in a scene of the game, if you think that that trait is going to help you in that moment, and the GM agrees, you can get a plus 20 to the roll. Not huge, but like I said, every little bit helps. So that's its own reward. You can only do that so often, because before the GM says, all right, no, enough, Mr. Altruistic. No more generous bonuses for you, Mr. Altruism. No, it's perfectly free, but you can only do it within reason. That is a big deal in this game. You will see that all throughout these pages. Common sense, within reason, use your head, don't be an idiot. You won't see that phrase, but that's the spirit. So now the other side of this is, if you think that there's a moment where your personality trait can cause you some sort of problem, you can voluntarily say, I want to take a penalty on this roll because of my personality trait. And if you do that, you get a plus 1 XP at the end of the session. That you can only do once. But again, it's a little, I got that. There's a bunch of games that do that kind of stuff. Forbidden Lands is a good one for that. Forbidden Lands has something called a dark secret. And if you allow your dark secret to cause you problems in the session, for whatever that means to you and the GM, then you get an XP. So that's kind of where that comes from. All right. Blah, blah, blah. Goals. Goals are so important that I go on for pages about them. Without goals, you cannot advance. You must have goals, and there's very specific criteria about goals. They need to be, well, it's here. They need to be Specific, proactive, and completable. I'm not going to go on about this. This is a big thing that I take from Burning Wheel, a game that I otherwise kind of hate. But I do love the idea of this idea of goals. The idea that your character is always trying to achieve something. And why? Because I've spent my entire life in show business. And in show business, the rule is always, if your character does not want anything, there is no story. There is no progression, there is no drama, there is no interest. I firmly believe that so much that it is a hard-coded rule in the game. Your characters must want something. What is it? There's many ways to figure that out, including the life origin events. Those are a big way to help, okay? The goals are very, very specific. There's a lot of information here about what a goal is, but also how to craft them, where they come from, how to resolve them, all this kind of stuff, okay? All right. Blah, blah, blah. We have an optional rule called status, which handles, it's totally optional, but it handles overall wealth or influence in a particular society. Very cool stuff, but completely optional. And then we get to XP. So I've talked about how you earn XP by following your goals, and you spend XP on various things, which is coming up here. Yeah, you spend XP on skills and buying talents, and that is it. But that's everything. The whole game is skills and talents. So that's what you spend your XP on, right? So you might get like an average game, you'd get between, I think, 3 and 5 XP, which roughly equates to, you know, a couple of skills going up. Now that is another difference. This is not a level-based game. So instead of going, I'm level 3, and all of a sudden I've got all these things I can do, no, it's incremental change. It's slow incremental change. You might think to yourself, if I've got a skill of 50 and I spend XP and now my skill is 53, big deal. What's 3%? I'll tell you what 3% is. When you roll 52 and you have a skill of 53, it's much better than a skill of 50. That's the difference. And that's not pedantic. It's math, and it's the way it works. So it's a very slow incremental process. Again, very much modeled after games like Harmaster, RuneQuest, Mithras. Okay. Binds and strands, these are your magic skills. They operate a little differently. Everybody still with me, yeah? Great. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
At the very top of the screen, I see a chapter on death there. How does that work?
Oh, this is just a little note about death and new PCs. If your character dies, which, yes, can happen. It's just a little thing basically saying, if you've played that character for a long time and you want to roll up a new character, you basically get a few bonus XP based on the power level of your previous character, just so you're not starting off as a complete noob.
Yeah, so when it comes to character creation, can you choose to take any particular weaknesses like short-sighted or whatever? And if so, will you get a mechanical drawback, or is it just a penalty?
So I don't have a flaws system built into it, like a virtue flaw system or a advantage-disadvantage system, as GURPS calls it. That was on the table at one point, but honestly, I didn't feel it added enough for me to be worth the return on the time investment, which is it's my phrase, roti. If it's not worth the roti, then it's no good. So it was just a choice, but personality traits can act as that. So if you have a negative personality trait, you can choose whether it affects you negatively, and then you get rewarded for that, right? XP? Yeah?
And because I am never happy unless something is my way, unfortunately, how moddable would it be to add in bundles of bonuses and penalties to this system?
Easy. As soon as you understand the system, and as soon as you understand how character creation works, that's just a little legwork on your part, but it's easy. I have a chapter about that in the GM section, about changing the game rules. You are all going to change this game when you play this game. That's going to happen. It's what we do as GMs. That's okay. The only thing I say is, and this is my personal belief, and I follow this all the time, I never change a game until I've played it rules as written for a few sessions first, because the designers often have something in mind that on paper doesn't make sense, but as soon as you put it into play, you go, oh, I get it. That's why this is the case. Conversely, things look great on paper sometimes. Don't work so well on the table. Burning Wheel, hello, my friend. But yes, it would take a little legwork, but it's easy to do. For example, in combat, it is a zone-based thing. And people go, no, where's my grid? I need my grid. It's not that hard to build a grid system in. It's pretty simple. But I ain't going to do it. That's your game, my friend. Okay.
What's the rule that you think will be the most difficult and you'll have to sell to people? And the reading on paper doesn't make sense, but it did work in mechanically on the table.
Sell to people as in that they don't understand when they read it? Is that what you mean?
You read a rule and you're like, is this going to work? That sounds kind of weird.
Oh, yeah. The entire social system.
Okay.
Yep, the entire social system. There's going to be a lot of people that go, rules for social encounters, but don't you just role play? And the answer is yes, you do role play. That's how the social mechanics work, as we will see. But yes, absolutely, the social system, as was evidenced last night at my dinner with Luke. Luke going, oh, social mechanics, not stupid. Not so much, not so much. All right. Yes. Yes.
If someone gains 5 XP in a session, someone else gains 3, and the next session is 5, 3, and 5, and 3. Is there a system for pulling that back together so that people are playing at similar?
So that people are equal? I despise the word equal. I despise equity in all of its forms. Cut that and put that on YouTube. No, no, there is no rule for that because sometimes people are going to advance at different levels. And that's a really old school way of doing things. In the old days of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, every class had a completely different XP progression. That still exists in certain games like Axe, Alexander Macros's Axe. So if you're a fighter, you're going to level up maybe faster than like a wizard would or something. And that's just the way it was. So in those days, you had characters, you've got a 6th level wizard with a 2nd level thief and a 4th. That was just the way it was. And I'm not consciously trying to emulate that. I kind of believe that it's just the way it works. I hate worlds leveling up with characters, and I hate any sense of artificial preserving a balance. I despise the concept of game balance. I understand why people do it, and I understand all of the Pathfinder 2 players out there. I really do. But in my opinion, Pathfinder 2 sacrifices so much on the holy altar of game balance. And to me, it's boring because every encounter feels the same. Yeah, they balance all the fun of it. But that's just me. That's no slight on Pathfinder 2. I play it. I run it. I have many friends who play it.
I also suspect that there's probably not that huge of a difference between a character that has 20 more
No.
XP.
Exactly. So that's a crucial distinction. So because characters do level up incrementally, exactly that. If your total XP, you don't even really count total XP because it doesn't matter. Because you take your XP and you immediately use it and spend it to improve your character. So your snapshot of the character, it is a little more difficult to see until you understand the system, right? But basically you would look at the overall skills of the character and go, oh, that guy's got a melee light of 97. He's awesome. Whereas the other guy's got 52. Okay, well, that gives you a pretty good idea of where they're at. But it's no guarantee, right? Because it is swingy, and maybe that guy, the 52 guy, has expertise. Like it could be lots of stuff. But yeah.
Also assume there's some kind of a diminishing return.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this is important too, and this does actually speak to your question. When you spend XP on getting your skills up, here's how it works. Let's say you've got a skill of 65, and you say, I want to spend a single point of XP to improve my skill. Okay, you do. How does that work? You spend the XP, you take your handy-dandy percentile dice, and you roll. And if you roll over your current skill, in other words, 66 to 100, it goes up by 1d4 plus 1. If you roll your skill or less, it goes up by 1. Which means the better you are at something, the harder it is to improve. So you could get skills over 100. That is possible, and there's very specific rules for how that plays, but it really fast becomes diminishing returns. It becomes so expensive to get those skills up there. So there is a limiting factor up there as well. So again, that's why your concern wasn't a concern to me, because I knew that's the overall progression, right? Cool. Yeah.
So there's 3 life event stages.
Yeah.
Are these at all related? Like, depending on the first roll, then that will affect your second roll? Or they just completely independent.
They're completely random. But what I didn't even talk about, the coolest part of this is once everybody has their life events, once all the players do, they sit down and I pulled this from Traveler, from the Mongoose Traveler. They sit down and they look at their life events and they go, okay, I think my origin event connects to your youth event because there was that thing that happened that I think when you were attacking that tower, I think I was part of the military camp that was blah, 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 blah. And if you find those connections, you actually get a little skill bonus as well. So it encourages the players to find those connections because all of those connections not only create rich characters who have a previous relationship, but they create goal possibilities, right? Every time we've done this, I have a cohesive party that all share goals right out of the gate. There's no three strangers meeting at a tavern in this game. I mean, you can, but by default, people start with, yeah, we all know each other. We've all been through stuff, right? Yes? Okay, let me move on here. Equipment. What shall I say? Oh, what to say about equipment? Not much. Other than it does exist. This is not a gear porn game. This isn't about, oh, I've got my +3 sword of wounding and I've got my rod of lordly might. Oh, those things may exist, but it's not about that. The accumulation of stuff is not the focus of this game, unless your character has a goal. I want to accumulate stuff, in which case it is. But I abstract a lot. Okay, so there is standard rules with haggling. I want to get that merchant's sword down 10 SP, silver pieces, whatever. You can do that. That's there. But typically speaking, that's not really the focus of things. Encumbrance is important, but only for two reasons. All I care about with encumbrance is, do you have enough surface area on your body to carry the stuff? This is not Skyrim. Which of my 15 swords should I find from my pack somehow that I'm carrying on my back, right? So you only have so much room to carry stuff. That's the first thing. And the second thing is armor. Armor, the better it is, and this is so, the HEMA guys hate me for this, but this is just a game thing. The better the armor is, the slower you move in combat, which is not at all historically accurate, at all. But it doesn't matter. It's a game thing, right? Neither are dragons, so there you go. So there is a balance there, right? So that's the important thing with encumbrance. Do you have room to put the thing on your body? And can you get the thing in time? And what kind of armor you're wearing? Does it slow you down? Does it make it harder for you to dodge a blow or to rise from prone in a combat? Yeah? Okay. That's all I'll say about encumbrance because it's boring, but important. Okay. I don't think it's boring at all. I think my encumbrance rules are awesome, but blah, blah, blah. Weapons, we've got all the different weapons. I said before that they're categories, but as you can see here, each weapon has its own stat line, right? Like a short sword costs 60. It's got 1 encumbrance, which means it deals with encumbrance. It does 2 damage. Weapons are static damage. Basically, in this game, a weapon has a static damage that you add your success levels to, your net success levels to find out what the damage is, minus any armor in the hit location. Then each weapon has, these are combat maneuvers that apply to specific weapons. Choose location, circumvent shield, disarm, or trip, and here's the costs. So the short sword, it costs 2 SLs. In other words, you have to generate 2 net SLs in a combat roll in order to qualify for either choosing a location, in other words, the head, the arm, the body, the whatever, or to circumvent the guy's shield. Shields in this game are awesome. Everyone should have that and a helmet if you want to live. And then disarm and trip are harder with a small weapon, 5 and 6. Basically, the bigger the weapon, the harder it is to choose a location or to circumvent a shield, but the easier it is to disarm someone or to trip them. There's other combat maneuvers too, which we'll get to. My favorite thing in this whole list is this dagger right there. This is my favorite thing. Thrown, you can throw the dagger. Look, it only does 1 damage, okay? But piercing 5 on a prone opponent or someone who's grappled. What does that mean? It means, yes, it means you ignore 5 points of armor with a dagger if they're prone or if you're in a grapple. This is that awesome scene in The King, where Henry is battling, what's his name? And of course it devolves into a grapple on the ground because every fight does. And he pulls out the knife. And that's what, I think that was that movie. Anyway, whatever, I'm thinking of some movie. That's what does it. And that's what did it historically too. Not that I'm some big historical reenactor, that's not the point. But I just love the idea that even if you see a tank walking up to you in full plate, you can still get him if you knock him on his ass somehow and then, gah! So it's possible, right? Love that rule. The best. Okay. Armor is cool and awesome and you need it or you'll die. Not a gear-based game, but there's a bunch of random items. This is the big one. This is sort of my nod to the new school. This is supply dice. People are going to hate this or love it, but that's okay. If you hate it, you can ignore it. There's an option how to do that. To tell you the honest truth, everyone, yes, it comes from Forbidden Lands. I'm not sure how I feel about the gear die yet. What this is, okay, let's talk about the others. So there's gear, ammo, medical, rations. Yeah, Forbidden Lands is where this concept, where I first saw this concept. I like it. It's funny though, because, so how it works, just for you unfamiliar with it, each of these things represents the total stuff you have. So your ammo die goes from D6 to D12, okay? Every time you shoot your bow, you roll the ammo die, and if it comes up 1 or 2, it decreases the next die step. So 12 goes to 10, goes to 8, goes to 6, goes to out. Now, why do I like this? Because I like rolling dice, and I like the uncertainty. When I shoot my bow, I don't know in the heat of combat whether I'm going to have an arrow for the next round or not, because it's chaos. I love that. I love the idea of chaos. So that's what this does. Anytime you're rolling dice, it introduces chaos, and chaos is good, because chaos is exciting. We like chaos. A lot of people say, no, no, no. I want to know exactly how many arrows I have in my quiver. I paid for 20 arrows. I want to track 20 arrows. Okay, go ahead. Your game, man. But me, I like this gear die, or this ammo die. Medical, same thing. Every time you do a heal check at all, you can use heal to do all kinds of stuff. You need to use it to do all kinds of stuff. Bringing people out of shock, or treating their wounds, or preventing infection, or sawing off their infected leg because they're about to die of sepsis. I love it! Is what you roll a medical die for. It's your bandages and your stuff, your medical stuff. Then rations is your food. Rations you don't actually need in all cases, weirdly, because the travel system, well, we'll get to the travel system. But gear, this is the controversial one. Gear is torches, lantern, oil, rope, and other useful equipment that your character could expect to have under normal circumstances. Hey GM, I'm a ranger. Hey GM, I'm a ranger. Do I have a wire for a snare? Yeah. Okay, then you have it. Now roll your gear die. If it rolls a 1 or a 2, your gear die goes down. What does this mean? It means as you go through your stuff, you lose your stuff. Your stuff gets broken, your stuff gets used. That's all. Are there edge cases? Well, I pulled out rope 5 times and I rolled 1 to 2 every time, and now I used my last rope and I'm out of tripwire? Yeah, that's an edge case. Use your head. You're a GM. Don't be an idiot. Figure it out, right? Really, if I could put that on all these pages, just figure it out. Come on, figure it out, guys. Then I would. But I don't know if I love it because of that very edge case. I'm still not convinced I love it. But I'm confident enough to be able to put into the first edition of the book. We'll see. Anyway, so that's that. Okay. You're all with me so far, right? I'm trying not to overwhelm you here, but there's a lot to get through. Combat. How can I get through this easy? Okay, biggest difference. Not biggest difference. I don't want to compare this to any other game. That's silly. We know what combat is. You're trying to kill the guy. He's trying to kill you, right? A violent conflict is structured in combat rounds, like I'm talking to a baby. We all know what a combat round is. On a round, you can move and do a thing. That's what you do. You can move and do a thing. It is a zone-based system. Why? Because I think zones are just easier to handle. I have nothing against hexes or grids. I love those games too. But for me, they become a little war-gamey, little tactical minis game. Again, love war games, love tactical minis games. But for this, I wanted something with a little more breathing room visually. And I use zones in a very particular way, as we'll see. You can move and do a thing. Initiative. You have an initiative score, which is your innate speed, which you can create yourself when you create your character. It is affected also by your armor. The more armor you wear, the slower you're going to be. However, the more protected you're going to be, right? We roll every round. Every round! Yes, however, only the players roll. All of the adversaries have a standard initiative. So, the standard initiative of an enemy is 12. You roll your 1d10 plus whatever your initiative bonus is, which is calculated from who you are as a fast, dexterous person, minus the armor. That's the number. I roll 1d10 plus 4. Okay, great. You rolled an 8. That's a bad example. You rolled a 7. Okay, 11. Oh, the bad guy's on 12. You go after. Oh no. Well, that's only this round. But also, you can spend resolve to bump up your initiative, and players break ties. So if you're both on 12, players go first. That's my little nod to the players. That's, here, player, there's your treat. Survive, players. There you go. You break ties. But it is every round, and a lot of people think every round initiative, oh my God, that's so much to track. It's really not. And especially if you're a VTT player, it's literally nothing to track. You just go click, and then there it is. But we do have a VTT coming, just so you know. That is on the way. All right, initiative, blah, blah, surprise. Surprise is awesome. If you can surprise your foe, do it. It's the best. Zones, it's ranges, yada, yada, yada. Here's the big deal, zone descriptors. As an optional rule, the GM could give zones flavorful descriptive features called zone descriptors. Fallen logs, rocky footing, fire everywhere, densely crowded, etc. These can be used by each player character or important NPCs once during the combat to give a plus 20 zone descriptor bonus to any skill roll if creatively justified within the context of the situation. You can only use one at a time. But I do not like the game of Fate. But what I do like about Fate, because I always like something about every game, even if I don't like the overall game, what I liked about Fate was there's aspects on zones which players can tag. Now, I do not like the mechanics of that in Fate. So here, there is options to do it slightly differently too, but this is just a nod to that. If you know that there's a fallen log there, and in your zone, let's say, and you're fighting a guy, you can tactically use that zone descriptor, give yourself a bonus. I attack him, and as I do, I push him over that fallen log. Great, plus 20. You can only do it once, because the enemy, he's not going to fall over the same thing twice, is the idea. Or you could use it to defend if you want. I leap behind the fallen log and roll. I get my plus 20. It just engages the player characters, or the players rather, even more with the tactical simulation that they're seeing there. As opposed to, I stand, I rolled a hit, I rolled a hit, I rolled a hit, he's dead. Okay, I moved 2 squares, I rolled a hit. No. This game is all about, combat is all about tactical maneuvering and using every possible advantage against your enemy. Knocking them prone is a big deal, as you'll see. Okay, zone descriptors are there. Here's a bunch of examples on descriptors. Zone hazards too, these are things like if the zone's on fire, what's going to do damage, or if it's cramped, or if it's rough terrain, stuff like that. They all have specific rules. And then here's a list of the biggest actions: aim, attack and melee, attack at range, hold, interrupt, yada, yada, yada. All the usual stuff you see in combat systems in every game in the world. There are some differences here, but I don't want to dwell on that. What I want to dwell on is there are critical successes and failures. It's not like a lot of games where I got a crit, I win the role-playing game. No. A crit means you roll doubles under your skill, that's a critical success. You roll doubles over, it's a critical failure. Critical success gives you plus 3 success levels. That's it. Oh, and in combat, it also gives you a secondary combat maneuver, which we're about to come to. So it's good, but it's not like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I rolled a crit, guys. I win, I killed the dragon. No. Critical fails only occur under very specific circumstances. I believe it's already bad enough to fail a roll without adding insult to injury unnecessarily. So a fumble in this case, if you critically fail when attacking, basically what happens is any engaged opponents may immediately leave melee from you. So basically, if you're engaged with somebody, you can't just walk away, right? You have to either flee, which is a bad idea, or do a fighting withdrawal. But if you fumble your attack, that gives them a second to be able to disengage and go somewhere else. So it's stuff like that, right? As opposed to, oh, I've dropped my sword and cut my own head off. No, I hate that stuff. All right. Can you tell I have an opinion? I don't know if it's clear. I have an opinion on things. Yeah, okay. Combat maneuvers. All right. This is unabashedly taken from Mithras. This was one of the greatest evolutions of game design I've ever seen. How many times, my friends, how many times have you been in a situation where you say to the GM, all right, see that guy? He's got that sword in his hand. Well, I don't want to kill him because we're trying to capture him. I want to disarm him. How do I do that? And the GM looks through the combat guide and says, oh, okay, make an attack roll with -4 and you'll do it. And what do you say? You say, to hell with it, I just hit him. Because I don't want the -4. Who wants the -4? Nobody wants the -4. So, Mithras, all power and glory upon them, came up with this concept. I think it was them. I'm pretty sure it was Pete and Laws that did this. When you succeed in a combat exchange, and a combat exchange is an attack and a defense. I attack you, you defend. If I miss, you don't have to roll. And no, there's no action points. Defending doesn't take an action. You can defend all day long if you want, but there are certain caveats to that. So if I attack and you defend, the result of that determines things. So let's say I attack and I get 5 SLs, and you defend and you get 2 SLs. I win with 3 SLs, 3 net SLs, right? You got a piece of it. Oh, you got a piece of it. Those 3 SLs do damage plus my weapon. So if my weapon damage is 4 plus 3 is 7, I'm going to do 7 points of damage. But those 3 SLs also allow me to perform a combat maneuver whose cost is based either on a standard cost, like unbalancing or driving back, or it's based on the weapon. Choose location, circumvent shield, that kind of stuff. That's why those numbers those 4 numbers in the weapons column are so important. The smaller weapons are faster. They can get around shields. But it's harder to knock a guy prone with that little dagger, right?
Damage bonus plus the...
Yes, and that is very, very important. It's marked somewhere here. That it's not an either or situation. You don't have to say, well, I've got 3 SLs, I'm just going to do the damage. No. You do the damage, and you get your combat maneuver. If you get a critical, you get to do 2 combat maneuvers, but you must qualify for it. If I got a net 2 SL hit on you, I cannot drive you back, because that costs 3, unless I have a special talent that allows me to do that, right? These are all awesome. Unbalance is the general one. I fought you back so that you're doing this. So your next roll is going to be -20. You're on the defense, whatever you do. Right? Drive back. This is what keeps combats mobile and interesting, especially when you have interesting zones and zone descriptors. If I'm in a clear zone and next to us is a zone with a bunch of sharp rocks, if I get 3 SLs on my attack on you, I can choose to drive you back and take you into that next zone. And because it's rough, now you have to do an athletics test or you fall prone. That's awesome. Now you're prone. You're big trouble if you're prone. So if there's also a zone descriptor bonus I can tag to do that, I can do it there. So these are all great. Unbalance, drive someone back. Choose location is a big deal. Why? Because we have piece armor. When you wear chainmail, you're not wearing a full suit of chainmail. Are you wearing a chainmail vest? Are you wearing chainmail sleeves? Are you wearing chainmail leggings? Are you wearing a chain hood? This is important because each location, when you hit that location, has a different effect. This is not a game of hit points. You do not do 5 hit points, nothing happens. 7 hit points, nothing happens. 10 hit points, oh, he's dead. Every hit in this game has the potential to be a fight-ending hit. Notice I did not say a deadly hit. I said a fight-ending hit because there's something called shock, which we're about to get into, which comes from Hornmaster, one of my favorites. Choose location, circumvent shield, cleave shield. This is with a big 2-handed weapon. You can smash the guy's shield into pieces. Disarm, trip, shield, bash, compel surrender. Oh, Pete and Laws were masters when they came up with this one. I love the idea that you can end a fight without killing a dude. Love that. Compel surrender means you don't do any actual damage to your opponent, but if you get 3 SLs and they are sufficiently disadvantaged, what does that mean? Based on the context. But there's some examples. He has 1 or more 3-point wounds, he's prone, disarmed, outnumbered, or is under any other disadvantaged condition that the GM decides. Keep that open because it's all about the context. If that happens, he's got to make a willpower roll against your attack roll. And if he fails, I give up. Don't kill me. This is the best thing ever. We have ended so many fights this way. It's so satisfying. I will tell you this too, in general. Fights of the Broken Empires tend to last 4 rounds tops before it's decided. So you don't have the D&D syndrome. Okay, it's my turn. I'll be back in an hour after I roll. Okay, have fun, guys. Okay, I'm going to go get a pizza. And when we come back, it'll be my turn again. That is not the case here. Okay, I'm really hard on D&D. I shouldn't be. It is the foundational game. But
We forgive you. We understand.
thank you. Compel surrender, grapple, which of course it wouldn't be a role-playing game without really complex grappling rules. But they work.
Isn't that really more modern D&D too? The older school D&D was a lot quicker.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it depends who you ask, but you... Yeah, the third and nuts. Yeah, like if you look at AD&D, for example, that was when Gary was like, wait a minute, everybody's making their own rules? Oh, I can't sell books that way. No, I'm going to introduce weapon speed factor. Yeah, that'll do it. But before that, it was very much what the OSR movement is today, which is, I don't know, we'll just roll your dexterity. You know, and people love that because it keeps things fast. I've said many times, for those of you who don't know this game, I've said many, many times that every game exists on a spectrum between detail of resolution and speed of resolution. This game falls on this side of the detail of resolution, but then I pull it back to the center, right? Game like Mythos or Hornmaster, I love these games, but they're deep in the weeds with simulationism, and so it takes a longer time to get through a fight. I just wanted things to move a little faster. That's what this whole thing is designed to do.
Do you have A through E grid tables in the
No. Okay, we'll talk about damage in a second. Hit locations. Each piece of armor has different armor points. So why do you choose location? If you're fighting a guy and he's very smart and has a plate helmet on, then hitting him in the head probably won't do much. But if he's only got padding on his legs, then hitting him in his leg might sweep his leg out from underneath him or cause him to buckle and fall prone. Oh, glorious prone. How we love prone. Or if he doesn't have a lot of armor in the arm and you hit him in the right arm, it might cause damage. It might cause him to drop his weapon. He's in big trouble. That's why. Also, if a guy's wounded in the right arm, hit him in the right arm, guys! Because we can really fuck him up if we hit him in the right arm, right? Concentration of fire, I believe we call that. Okay. Options, situational rules, blah, blah, blah. All the usual stuff you need to know. Combat modifier reference table, wounds, healing, and perils. Let me go back to this one. Yes, with me? Yes, I haven't bored you horribly so far. Ouch! No, I'm just kidding. Okay. We're doing good for time. Racing through, but as long as you're I'm not seeing too many sleepy faces, so that's a good sign. And again, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. All right. No, don't stop me now. No, I'm just kidding.
So you have this Google Docs, this Pages document. When you release the PDF, will you also release like something like that? So if there's, for example, certain pages we want to print, pass it out to players, printer-friendly version.
No, not this. But the PDF will have a printer-friendly version, I think. I'm authorized to say that. I think my guy is planning to do that. We might have to release what I call the ASCII document. It's not at all an ASCII document, but it's essentially a version of this. It's a text version of that. The only reason why I would do that is if our schedule is running too late, which, yes, our schedule is running late because it's the world and we live in it and things happen and artists don't get back to me in time and all kinds of things happen. So yes, we are running a little behind. It's not devastating, but it's a little behind. But I had promised my backers, I'd said, you will be able to play this game in 2025, thinking I'd have a fully finished PDF for you this morning. This is not it. So we're behind. I want to keep that promise to my backers at the very least. And I had a big powwow meeting with my guys, and I said, they need to have the rules by Christmas at the latest and way before that, if possible. And they said, okay, we'll probably be ready for that. But if we're not, if we run into some horrible thing, we will release the ASCII document, which is essentially like an SRD. So in a way, the answer is yes and no, right? I want not to do that because I would rather release the actual thing, which then will have printer-friendly pages. But if I have to, you will get this. Yeah.
Or will there be a Powered by Broken Empires program?
Not at the moment. I'm keeping careful regulation on my baby. But that may change. Yeah. If there's enough, I was about to say outcry, if there's enough demand, if there's enough demand for it, then we'll talk about it. Yes, I get that. The Black Lodge guys are on me every time. So, you gonna open license or, I'm like, just go away, go. I don't wanna. Okay. Okay, this is great. Marking a wound. So, you've taken damage from a sword. Some guy has come up to you and he stabbed you in the belly, the bastard. And he has got 3 SLs and his sword does 4, so he's done 7 damage. You didn't defend at all. You blew your defense roll, so you've taken 7 damage. Do you have any armor? Let's say you have 3 points of armor. Let's say you've got leather. Smart man. Armor. Armor saved lives. So now instead of a 7-point wound, you've taken a 4-point wound. Doesn't sound so bad. Every wound has the potential to throw you into shock. How it works is, every time you get hit, you look at the total wound points you have in that body section, okay? Now, I said belly. How do I know if I've hit you in the belly? Well, how I know if I've hit you in the body is I look at my ones die. The tens die is the success level, but the ones die is the hit location. So if I rolled a 65, yes, 1 to 5 is the body, which means I've hit you in the body. But how do I know it's the belly? Well, on your character sheet, which I should really pull up here so you can see it. On your character sheet, it's right here. Look, body 1 to 5, right arm 6, head 10. It's right there. But also detailed locations. Look at this. I've hit you in the body. And I said belly or stomach. Well, that's between 6 and 8. It says right there. But how do I know that? I know that because the ones die of your defense roll tells me that's the detailed location. Yeah, wow, that's not even my idea. That's a backer's idea on Discord. I was like, dude, I'm going to steal that.
That's great.
I know, it's so cool. Thank you, whoever you are. Yeah, so great. It just saves the roll, right? It's so much information packed into our exchange. My attack, your defense, boom. Okay, right? So I've done a 4-point wound in your belly. You stab you, make a maggot out of your belly. What happens? You must then roll a wound die. A wound die is a D10 to which you add your toughness, which you buy in character creation. You can also buy as talents as you go. So if you roll that D10 and you add your toughness, if you get the total wound points in the body location or less, you are impaired. If it's over, you're okay. You're fine. What does impaired mean? It depends on the location that gets impaired. If the first time you're impaired in the body, you might have to, well, you'll have to do an endurance roll. And if you fail that, you drop in shock for a number of rounds equal to the number on the wound die. So the worse you roll, the longer you're in shock. If you're in shock in a fight, you're done. It's over. You're not getting back up. Unless you have a friend who can get in there and revive you. That sounds brutal. And it is. So be careful when you fight. Make sure your toughness is up. Make sure you're wearing armor. Make sure you're good at defending yourself. Make sure you have friends who can get in there with the hero. But we have seen throughout the playtesting process, shock, falling into shock, it's not as common as you might fear, but it's common enough to make every single player going, okay, we're getting into melee combat. Here we go. Everybody. And I love that. Nobody goes, come on, I'm a 10th level fighter. I can take these goblins. That goblin could do a 1-point wound to you. And if you have no toughness and you roll a 1, good night, Irene. For a minute. So it could happen. Depending where you hit, though, it might not be shock immediately. In the head, if you get hit in the head the first time it's impaired, you're stunned. Ugh. Rung your bell, which gives you a little penalty. It's like being unbalanced. The second time any body location is impaired, good night. That's it. Overwhelming pain, you're done. Being in shock does not mean dead. It means, oh God! Someone get me a medic! That's what being in shock means. You can still crawl. You can crawl to safety, but you're done. With enemies, again, so many times this is borne out in the playtesting. You don't have to fight to the death. In fact, most things will not fight to the death. There's a factor in the for every creature in the bestiary called ferocity. Ferocity determines whether or not a creature is going to fight to the death. It goes from 1 to 5. 1, you insult him, he flees. 5, it's like an undead. It's the Terminator. It's coming at you. There's nothing you do to stop it. And then everything in between. Most things are around 2. In other words, most living creatures, if you shove a gank of steel into their leg, okay, you win, pal, I'm out. Right? So sending enemies into shock in our playtests was overwhelmingly the way that we won or compelling the surrender. Just displaying overwhelming force. And the enemies went, oh, yep, okay, you won this. Don't kill me, right? Depends what you're fighting, obviously. Okay, you look at your question.
Have a reputation for murder hoboing and never offering surrender and offering everyone they find. Is it harder or harder to get people to surrender, or is it still mechanically just as easy if they know they're just going to be instantly slaughtered?
You tell me.
I'm the GM then?
Yes. Aha, good question. So this is one of those things, right? I want to attack his leg. Okay, roll -4. No, choose location. The choose location combat maneuver, right? So if I succeeded with enough SLs to be able to, I don't want to hit him in the left arm. I want to hit him in the right leg where he's already wounded and he's got no armor. Choose location, wham, right? If you get a critical, you get to do 2 combat maneuvers. So that might be circumvent shield, choose location, or choose location, drive back, or, right? Okay. So, yeah, in shock is bad, but it's not dead. You also have something called lethality. Yes, sir. Does it give you any kind of bonuses or difference to shock or make enemies surrender? It can. Yeah, magic is incredibly versatile. That's a whole thing we'll get to. We will get to, I promise. Anyway, so the point is there's also, wounds are bad, but they're not necessarily deadly. There are something called lethality level. If you fall into shock, and it's based on your particular body location, if you fall into shock and your total wound points are over your lethality level, you're actually dying. And every round you have to roll that wound die to see if you expire, right? So it's, again, friends are good. Friends are good. Get in there, do a heal check, stabilize the wound. You might stabilize automatically. If you roll a 10 on the wound die when you're dying, you stabilize. You're good. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it's bad, right? It's bad. Yes, sir.
You're talking about rolling the heal check. Is there an item or anything where you might have where you don't have to roll? Like I know in D&D, you've got like the med kit.
Oh yeah, well, unless it's some sort of pure magic item, you would always have to roll. That's why you've got medical supplies. Remember, every time you do a heal check for anything, you have to also roll your medical supplies to see if they degrade. So if you have no medical supplies left, you can't perform a heal check. You've got no bandages left, right? So that's how that works. This is a big chapter. I'm not going to go through everything because there's a lot here, but it's awesome. All right, dying. Death, yes. Ooh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
On supply die. So
Yeah.
I've played in different games. Some of them you have to roll the supply die before the action. Some of them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good question. You do the thing and then roll the dice. Yeah. It's always assumed you have the thing if you've got any die. Yeah.
You mentioned lethality level.
Yes.
Is that something that accumulates when you?
So what that means is it's a level, and it's written right in the character sheet. Well, you can't see it here, but it's written in the character sheet right where you need to see it. It's a threshold. So at any point, if your total wound points, which you can see written right there, if they go over that lethality level, there's no effect on you unless you are in shock. If you drop in shock when the total wound points in that location are over the lethality level, now you're dying. Right? And it's different. So like the head has a much lower lethality level. It's only 5, whereas the body is something like 8 or something like that, which doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, 1 or 2 points in this game is a big deal. There's also something called death threshold, which is essentially a kind of hit point. It just means you can only take so many wound points in total before you're done, right? Typical characters are 20. You can take a total of 20 points before that's it, which is actually very generous. Again, I throw a bauble to the players.
Are there enemies with only that? So like zombies that just don't care.
Correct.
Until
Correct. That's why undead are brutal in this game. You know, I put my characters in a playtest against 5 skeletons. They got their asses kicked by 5 skeletons. So this is not your father's D&D game. All right. Blah, 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 blah. Death threshold, non-lethal wounds, healing wounds. So good. But we're going to go past it. Rest and recovery, I will just say, in order to heal your wounds, you need to have someone treat it, and then you have to, each wound recovers individually. That comes from Harnmaster. There's reasons for that. Mostly because if you ever, you do an endurance roll, basically, for each wound, but only when you're in a place of rest. And if you succeed at that, that wound gets better. If you fail, it doesn't. If you fumble, that wound becomes infected, which is a whole other thing. But rest, recovery, so crucial. But it depends where you are. Every hex on the world map, to the GM's eyes only, has a danger level. Green, which is the best, normal, yellow, and red. The more dangerous the area that the players are trying to rest in, the harder it is to recover. Because there's, what's that? No one's really getting any sleep if there's enemies prowling around, right? You also recover resolve points. Resolve is huge because it's your extra bonuses to fuel anything you want, but you only get it back by resting. And it's all about the quality of rest you get. So just, I'm going to take my long rest outside the dungeon. Oh, I don't think you are, my friend. I don't think you are. So again, it's contingent upon the players to do the smart thing, right? It's all, the entire game, the underlying philosophy is choice and consequence, choice and consequence, choice and consequence. Every choice has a consequence, right? Okay. Rest and recovery, magical healing, we're going to get to that. Divine healing, we'll get to all that. Infection, so many great rules. Oh, so many ways to lose limbs to sepsis. Other perils, you've got your acid, you got your cold freezing, you got your drowning, you got your falling, you got all the good stuff. Okay, let's get into travel. Boy, gotta go fast. Okay, travel is heavily influenced by the One Ring. Unless it's not. There's essentially 2 different systems. There is the One Ring style, which is, we are on an epic journey crossing hundreds of miles. How are we going to abstract that while still using our skills and feeling the weight of the road, feeling the dirt of the road? That is what this system does. That's what the One Ring does, and that's what I went, ooh, I love that. Travel in my game makes the players feel like, oh man, we got here. It's awesome. But they feel so like they've accomplished something. We got to the dungeon! My God, we did it, guys! Now let's go in and die. So that's one version of travel. It's all about roles. You need your guide, your quartermaster, your scout. They do things. There's just a whole host of if you don't like anything about this game, if you think this game sucks, I want to go back to D&D, buy it for the random encounter tables that the GM generates for the travel system. It is Unbelievable. Again, Jason Lutz to the rescue. Fantastic. So great. I love improv and I love creation in the moment. So many tools of that. So the travel system, whole thing, so cool, but it's about trying not to get tired. You do not want to arrive at your destination full of fatigue, because that's bad. Fatigue impacts your resolve. Without resolve, you don't have those extra bonuses to help you get through. So it's not the end of the world, but it's not good. I'd rather have the resolve points than not, right? So that is the journey system. Then there's what we call the daily time system, which is just basically, we're exploring. We don't know what's out here. You know what? Let's explore these hexes and see what's there. Okay, yep, there's rules for that too. They're very similar, but they're slightly different because the focus is different. Now the focus is on daily survival. Daily, okay, we need our rations. We need to make our ration dies. And there's a procedure. Here's something I found. A lot of GMs who see these kind of rules go, oh, this is just a bunch of die rolling. Oh, it's stupid. Why would I do that? To which I say, if you just make it a bunch of die rolling, you're not GMing the game. You're just rolling dice. Anything can be just reduced to a bunch of mindless dice rolling. God knows combat can, right? We've all been in that game. Here we go. Here we go. Well, of course, if you run the game like that, it's going to suck. But this is designed, I've got a whole thing in here about how to evoke the broken empires for your player, how to get them to smell the trees, to feel and hear the wind. Man, you want to put them there. You want to put them in the world so that they feel like, I'm not like they're going to go nuts and, but they want to have that powerful vision in their imagination. That's what my players love about my games. They feel like they've been there. They feel like they were there. They feel like they went through the trials their characters went through. And they're exhausted, I'm not gonna lie. They're exhausted after my sessions, but they go, that is the best gaming we've ever done, but god damn, that's a hard game. That's what this is. Or can be, doesn't have to be. Of course, you can dial things back, make it easier, blah, blah, blah. All right, so the travel is so cool, so cool. Then we get to Intrigue. So Intrigue is basically the social encounters. All right, there's a lot here, but let me just say, accommodate, not replace. The rules for social encounters are only when the players need something of importance from an NPC. This is not, I want to bribe the guard. Social encounter, guys! No. You want to bribe the guard? Put some money down. Maybe make a roll, depending. It's fine. Social encounters are, all right, we're in the court of the Baron, and we need his permission to cross his lands with this group of soldiers because we need to get to a place to do a thing. But we need his permission to do it. How are we going to do it? That's what this is. When there's something at stake, when the social battlefield becomes just as important to detail tactically as the physical combat battlefield. That's what this is. But notice I don't use the term social combat. This is not about knocking someone's social hit points down. This is about getting what you want from that person before you exceed their tolerance. Something else from the One Ring. The One Ring says, anybody of importance that you talk to has only got so much time for you. So make your case. Make your case while you can. The great thing, players don't know what that tolerance is unless they infer it through context. But even then, I'm not sure. Is it 5 or 7 or 3? Be very careful what you say. Here's the thing. In this system, the role-playing of the player triggers the skill of the character. We have all seen that classic situation. We're all sitting around playing D&D, and the very charismatic player, who everybody loves, he's a real charmer. He's playing a guy with a charisma of 4, but he starts to sweet-talk the DM and sweet-talk these characters, and the DM says, how could I say no to you? That's not role-playing. That's using your gifts and skills to manipulate the GM to get what you want. And if that's your thing, all the power to you. That is not my thing. My thing is, I want to play a character. I want the character skill to matter. But I still want to retain control of how I direct that character to act. The role-playing triggers the skill. Here's how it works. My lord, My liege, I beseech you, me and my comrades, we must pass through your lands with these 5 soldiers. Yes, be they bandits, we know their attitude, we know their reputation, but I beseech you, my lord, without your permission, we cannot cross these lands and raid the tower of blah, 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 blah. I beg you, sir, from one minor lord to another, I beg you, sir. The GM says, that sounds a lot like the protocol skill. Roll that. And that player, who knows that his character's got a good protocol skill, says, yes, I believe I will. Thank you. And he rolls. Maybe he says, I want to spend 2 points of resolve on this to get a plus 20. Okay, maybe he does. Great. What if the player, who's a very fiery player, who is playing a very noble knight now, exact same situation, but the player is very reactive. And the player maybe hasn't thought about the skills of the character. And the player says, damn it, Lord, if you don't let us through, everyone's going to die. And the GM says, roll and intimidate. And the player says, intimidate? I was trying to persuade him. The table goes, fuck that. No, you weren't. Look what you did. You basically threatened his kingdom. Dude, intimidate. And I, as a GM, don't have to do that. The table does that most of the time. But then I, as a GM, do that too, just make sure. So he goes, but my intimidate sucks. Uh-huh. Should have thought of that before you open your mouth like that. It sounds harsh, sounds punishing. It is not. The players only need to learn this lesson once. And once they do, social encounters become some of the most wonderfully tense tactical situations you can imagine. But there's some buy-in. Players have to buy into this. They have to understand, this is crucial, and this is spelled out in the rules. Everyone has to speak the same language. Everybody has to understand what the difference between persuade and intimidate is. Everybody has to understand the subtle nuances between wit and deceive or whatever. Now, those are spelled out in the book, but it doesn't matter. As a table, you still have to make sure you're all speaking the same language, because the last thing you want is the player says the thing, and you say, sounds like an intimidate, and he goes, I totally thought that was persuasive. What? And he's being genuine. That can happen. At which point you have an option. The option is typically, okay, that's fine. I'll give it to you this time. But for next time, let's remember what persuade means, right? Look it up. Oh, persuade is not threatening their kingdom. Oh, okay. All right. It's just speaking the same language. That's all. It's like session 0 stuff, right? We all want to make sure we're playing the same game. So that's how this works. If you have people that don't, well, that's how this works. That's how this works. And I'm telling you, I've been using this system for years. I adopt this system in every game I run. Doesn't matter what the system is. And it's awesome. But everybody has to speak language, and characters need goals. They need to want something from this NPC. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? So cool. And there's all kinds of nuances. There's standard, there's competitive roles where you might have, like, in that same situation, my lord, you must beseech us. And then his counselor, who really hates you, says, no, my liege, do not allow these scum across the land. That becomes a competition now. Now maybe he knocks down your success levels and you have to say, no, he's put your forked tongue behind your teeth. And then you get some more. And yeah, look at that. Now you got a little contest going on. And isn't it great? Yes, it is. Take my word for it. All right, moving on. Yeah, so many things in here. Let's get on to Weave Magic, the big one. Ars Magica. Who knows it? Okay, all right. Okay, this is going to blow your minds then, dude. This system is highly influenced by Ars Magica and by Mage, by White Wolf. Why? Mage, because Mage has a concept called paradox. What that means is when you futz with reality, reality notices and reality punishes you and say, hey, what are you doing? Creating lightning out of a clear blue sky and throwing it at this guy in a dungeon. That's not real. That's what paradox does. So too in this world, the weave of reality, of the great tapestry of reality, wants to remain interlaced with itself. And spell weavers literally pull at the fabric of reality and weave it into images that please them. That is how they change reality. Reality hates that. Reality fights back. So that's paradox. Ars Magica influence. Ars Magica systematized all of magic by saying there are 5 ways to manipulate the universe, and there are 10 parts of the universe to be manipulated. So, the binds and strand. The binds, how you bind the weave to your will. Change, conjure, control, destroy, witness. Change, I alter the properties of. Control, I make things work according to my desires. To conjure, I create, I bring into existence. Destroy, I destroy, I cause damage. Witness, I see, I observe, I perceive. Those are the 5 ways to manipulate reality. How do you, or what about reality do you manipulate? Air, all sound, electricity, all of that stuff is air. Beast, anything to do with the animal world. Body, anything to do with life, the human body, properties of the humanoid physical form. Earth, terrestrial materials, minerals, soil, metal, rock. Fire, not just fire, but also light that produces heat. Plant, spheres. Spheres is magic itself, the dimensions, the other realms of existence. Thought, imagination, dreams, mind. Spirit, the spirit realm, ghosts, undead, and water, any precipitation, snow, ice, all of that stuff. Now, some of these things may overlap. That's fine. That's up to you. There is a paragraph in this section that says, of all the sections in this game, this one is the most important for you to set your own boundaries. Because magic, by its very definition, can do anything until it can't. There are 5 laws to magic. The bounded laws of magic. The law of mystery. This is my favorite one. The law of mystery says some things you can't explain. How does that magic item work? Nobody knows. It just does. Shut up. That's your get out of jail free card as an adventure designer. Why is the tower floating? That doesn't work. That's a mystery. The law of limitation. These are things that magic cannot do. You cannot affect time or reverse the course of aging. You cannot affect the sun or the moon or any of the heavenly bodies. You cannot bring back the dead, nor can you create life. Only the pale imitation of life. Many, many things. Yada, yada, yada. This law can also cover anything else the GM deems impossible. Again, your game. You set the boundaries with your players, right? They need to know, speak the same language. They need to know. Hey, GM, can I use magic to jump to the moon? This law is the law of no, you can't jump to the moon. Because it's also the law of, because I think it's stupid and will break this game, that's why. So another get out of jail free card. But basically there's things that magic can do and there's things that magic can't do. Why is this important? Because if you have magic that can do anything you can imagine, you no longer have a game. You have a wish granting machine for which there can be no rules. And we are playing a game and a game requires rules. And these are the rules. Limitations. Yep, has to be done. Law of resistance basically means anytime magic tries to affect you, you can resist it. Magic is extremely versatile and extremely powerful, but you always get a chance to say, nope. Now, that'll depend on the strength of the spell coming in at you, which is based on the bind roll of the caster. His SL roll, his SL becomes your target SL. So if he's got a skill of 60, he rolls a 52, he succeeded with 5. You must succeed with 5 SLs, right? But you get a chance, always, 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 always. And it's all or nothing. If he blasts you with a lightning bolt, which is a very stupid thing to do, as you will see when we come to weave reactions, but if he does so, you don't get a piece of it like you do if you're defending. It's all or nothing. I completely resist it, or I suck it up, princess. All right. Law of logic. This is my favorite one, and this is crucial when you have a system that is designed to be piecemeal, where you can create your own thing. The law of logic says one thing must lead to another along a path of simple logic. Big paragraph that explains what that means. It just means when you are trying to create a magical effect, you have to try and seat it in reality. You have to seat it in the world. How would that work? Right? Like, for example, creating a skeleton warrior to fight for you would follow something similar to this process. First, you'd cast a conjure body spell to create the skeleton out of nothing. Okay, so there's a pile of lifeless bones on the ground. Now you must animate it with the control body. Great. You've got a skeleton that can move by your command. Any attack it makes will be bony little fists. You may need to conjure earth to create a sword for it. What weapon skill does it use? Well, according to the law of limitation, because it is controlled by you, it uses half your weapon skill and so forth. Logic. What does that mean in your game specifically? I don't know. That's up to you. But you will see that there is a formula for creating magic, and once you understand that formula, you'll be able to apply your own logic to it. And as long as you're doing that with your magic using player, you'll be fine. Yeah? And finally, the law of reaction, my favorite. Reality fights back. Every time you cast a spell, there's two parts to it. The first one is to cast it. I'm going to think up this thing. Oh, that sounds cool. Do I have the appropriate bind and strand to combine in order to make my roll and have the thing happen? I do. Great. I roll. I succeeded. Great. Awesome. Yes, the spell works. Now, can you control it? Your bind skill is about your raw skill to make the spell happen. The strand skill is not a D100 number. It is a single-digit number in most cases. The strand number offsets the cost of the spell. When you create a spell, it is built the following way. It is built with magnitude, which we'll come to in a second. Target, who is the target? How many targets? Range, where is the target? Duration, how long does the effect last? And effect, what does the effect do? Magnitude is how offensive to the weave this is. So you look at all of this together, and each of these things have points, and when you create a spell, you go, oh, this is a 15 SL spell, which means you must come up with 15 SLs worth in order to control the spell. Not to cast it, you just need to succeed at your skill to cast it. But you think, I can't get 15 SLs, I only have a skill of 60. That's correct. The best you can do with your skill is 9 SLs. Why? Because in this game, if you roll your skill exactly, it also counts as a critical, which is +3. So if you have a skill of 60 and you roll 60, it's actually 9 SLs instead of 6. You can only get 9. I can't possibly get to 15. Yes, you can. You look at your strand value, you add that. Let's say your strand's 5. Okay, so I had 9. Now I have 14 SLs. I'm only short 1. Great. You can let that happen, or you can spend a resolve to cover the spread. That is why resolve is crucial for spellweavers. Crucial. They use their resolve to cover the spread. Now you don't have to cover the spread. You can just say, nah, see what happens, weave, bring it on. Because if you cast a spell and you do not control it, the weave goes, okay, let's see what this guy's doing. At which point you roll a d20 and you add the amount of SLs you did not cover in your spread to that d20, and you look at our little handy-dandy chart, and it tells you the world explodes. The world never explodes. And neither do you. But bad things can happen. Sometimes good things can happen. Weave reactions aren't always bad. They're only mostly bad. Typically, as a spell weaver, you don't want weave reactions. There's something for a spell weaver called fraying, which I'll get to, but it's a crucial limiting factor with spell weavers destroy the world. All right. Yes, everyone with me? Yeah? Okay. Spellweavers also have magic items called threads. Threads are physicalized pieces of the weave that they use to fuel their spells. They are like gold to spellweavers. My staff is a plant thread. that gives me a D10 resource die, supply die in plant. Every time I cast a plant-based spell, I can add a certain amount of SLs to that to control it. And there's different types of threads. Some go away. Some are limited use. Some are not. Yes? Thank you. Well, thank you. I am a professional. Yeah. Yeah, but it's important. Threads are just as, I mean, they are the currency of spellweavers. And there's permanent threads, location-based threads. This is where you get these spellweavers who discover this pool that gives water and control thread. And now they build their fortress around that because they know they can constantly draw on this, right?
Did you come up with that part?
Yes.
Did you come up?
I actually did come up with something original. I know, it's hard to believe. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Okay.
I keep thinking of your Gandalf example, you know?
Yes. Yes. Your staff is broken.
Your -6 SL.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so there's so much here, all the different kinds of effects you can do, but we should cover it. I will never be able to tell you all the things that your players or you want to do in this game because it's magic. So what I've done is given all of the things I could think of that players might do. For example, the effect of the spell might be something that affects a skill value, something that's used to attack, something that heals, something that enhances a weapon or enhances armor points. You get the idea. This is not a game of spell lists. You create your own effect every time you cast. There is no spell lists. There is a whole list of example spells in the book, so you get a good idea of the relative power and what these things might look like, but there are no spell lists. You decide. You can also create your own. I always want to do this same kind of spell. I'm going to write that down so I know every time. Oh, it's 14 SL? Yeah, I got it. Yes.
How radically, if someone's like, okay, I want to play a healer or a flesh mage, so they take body magic and conjure, I guess it would be, how radical would a standard PC be able to change things? Is it instantly open mortality, or is it okay, you're not going to immediately die and you'll heal in 4 days instead of 5?
That depends on the effect that you pay for, and mostly the magnitude. This is a crucial idea. Every spell has a magnitude between 0 and lots. There's 4 levels. I should probably look this up because I'm talking about my own game, and I should know what I'm talking about. Where are you, magnitude?
Yeah, discrete.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Discrete, subtle, offensive, and vulgar. What this means is, every time you describe and build your spell, the GM decides how offensive to the weave is the spell. The more subtle your magic, the less the magnitude. That is why, if you're in the dungeon, underground, and you say, I conjure a lightning bolt out of midair and attack that dude, that is a vulgar fucking spell, my friends. That is crazy. There is no way that can happen. And there's specific guidance for each of these, okay? Your goal is to be as discreet as possible. If you can, for example, I want to heal somebody, but I take all the time in the world and I take my bandages out and I go through the process of making a heal roll, but really what I'm doing is casting a spell and I allow that to happen over the course of hours. Discreet. The weave goes, yeah, no, I didn't see anything. The goal in this game is to be Gandalf, not Raistlin. Subtle magic. Subtle. There are guys walking around casting fireballs, but here's why you don't do that. There is a concept in the game called fraying, as I've already mentioned. Think of fraying like an inevitable dementia. There's something in Ars Magica called Wizard's Twilight. It's inspired by this, but it's worse than that. One of the common things that can happen if you don't control the spell, and remember, the higher the magnitude, the higher the cost of the spell. You cast that vulgar spell, that 15 SL spell is now a 25 SL spell. Remember how that works? D20 plus the difference that you can't cover. The higher you roll on that table, the more likely you're going to accumulate fraying. Fraying is the weave saying, I see you. I see what you're doing. The weave starts to fray your pattern until eventually the weave says, I am plucking you out of the pattern of reality, and you come with me. When that happens, there is no going back. Every spell weaver is a ticking time bomb. Every spell weaver knows the day that they hit a certain level of fraying, every spell they cast could rip them body and soul from reality forever. No, there is no cure. Yes, there are a million spell weavers desperately trying to find a cure. That is the limiting factor. So you want to be that dude who's blasting people in the underground with lightning? Be my guest. But your days are numbered, and eventually the weave will come for you. That is how we get around the leveling problem. With Magic, every game says, oh, well, a level 1 spell is just a very small, but hey, a level 9 spell is gargantuan. You're a starting character, you can cast a level 9 spell if you want. If you're willing to pay the price. Choice, consequence. I love it. All right. So, Weave Magic, super cool. Oh, we're running out of time. Okay. Let's talk very briefly about my other favorite thing, Divine Magic. Divine Magic is inspired kind of by Hornmaster, but not really. Here's my thing. I have always believed that the two sources of magic are different. Arcane and Divine are different things. Clerics, priests, whatever you want to call them, they're called God-bound in this world. They do not do anything other than petition their deity for help. That's it. They have no control. Joan of Arc never said, God, here's what I want you to do. I want you to hit that English tower with a fireball, and I want it to do 66 damage, and I want to spread the effect over the first floor. No. Joan of Arc said, help me, O Lord, protect me. And whether or not you believe the story, God either did or did not, if such a being exists. In the Broken Empires, such beings exist. And when you are a God-bound, you petition your God, and if your piety is high enough, your God will help you if you make the roll. But here's the thing. Your piety always changes. Every time you ask your God for help, your piety will decrease, and you do not know what that number is. It is hidden from you. You can take steps to increase your piety by, being a priest, by enacting the will of your God, by holding mass, by hearing confession, by rooting out enemies and heretics, by consecrating holy ground, by establishing a church. Priest shit. That is how you get piety back. And the more piety you get, the more likely your God is not only going to listen to you, but grant you the greater miracles. Because you make a piety roll, and the SLs you get on that roll will determine the quality of the miracle you get. You get 9 or more SLs, that's a greater miracle, baby. Woo, we're talking part the waters. So, this system mechanically enforces a priest to act like a priest, not like a second-rate magic user. Well, I've got my priestly spell list. No, you do not. You ask your God for help. Now, the gods have domains, and they have very particular things that they are in charge of. So you cannot ask the goddess of healing to blast your enemies with a fireball. She'll say, dude, not my party. Not my party. But you can ask her to do all kinds of things that are within her purview. The GM decides what the effect is, and there are whole hosts of lists that give examples of each of the domains. So the GM can have some idea of what might happen.
Are you allowed to do both types of magic via cleric that also
Sure.
leave?
Sure, if you want to spend the XP to become so. And again, you can develop your character in whatever direction you want. So here we go. Fire domain. Heat, light, fire, crafting, strong emotion. These are the things that it affects. The lesser miracles. Typically, it's a skill bonus or an expertise bonus to a couple of rolls. The middle miracles could be lots of things. The Godbound does not suffer the effects of cold or freezing for one day. A jet of flame from an existing fire shoots forth at a target within close range, doing 1d8 fire damage opposed by dodge. or whatever. But these are just examples to give you a rough sense of what the basic power level is, right? The greater miracle. The Godbound summons a wall of flame through 1d3 contiguous zones, creating a zone damaging hazard. Intensity 5. Oh my God. Literally, oh my God. So, whole bunch of examples. Are these spell lists? Yeah, basically. But they're not. They're godly powers. Shh, they're godly powers. But yes, it's up to the GM to figure this out. A lot of people hate that. A lot of GMs are like, I don't want to have to figure out what happens every time my priest casts a spell. Understand, your priest isn't going to be casting a spell. Your priest is going to be asking for holy and divine intercession, and they can only do that so much, because every time they ask, their piety goes down. And yes, you do have to track that. You're a GM, you have to track things. So, priests are the best, because they're helpless. They must do the will of their God, or they will be cast out. Eventually, if your piety gets down to a point, you will be cast out. And I think I'm about to be cast out. So that's as far as we get, guys, but that is a lot more than anyone has ever seen before in this game. Thank you. Yes.
You GM'd this, and your people have GM'd this.
Yes.
You have a way that you keep track of it. Seeing some of that would be awesome.
Yes. So I have a lot of that stuff in the book, like, for example, initiative. I have a chart that is an example of specifically how I track initiative. And yeah, and also we have the GM screen. The GM screen is going to have all that stuff on there as well. So believe me, I'm doing as much as I can to make this as accessible for GMs as possible. But make no mistake, this is not designed for beginner players. And I unapologetically say that in the beginning of the book. If you're a brand new player, you might not immediately grasp this stuff. But hey, I started back when I was like 10 with Rollmaster. And if I could figure Rollmaster out at 10, this is nothing. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.